9:04 on Game Night Montreal. Matthew Ross here, subbing in for Eric Thomas. Mo Khan is here as well. And let's bring in our next guest. That's what the song normally means. He comes by way of mayorsmanor.com. You can follow him on twitter.com/mayornhl. It is our reasonably friendly friend, John Hoven. How you doing, John?
Rossi, I'm just glad to have Mo back in the picture. You know, the last couple of times I've talked to you, he hasn't been around.
That's true.
John, I was just pointing out to Matt off air that the song, CM Punk's theme song, became because you pointed out to me one night before WrestleMania that you preferred CM Punk's intro song.
Yes. Well, it's a little disappointing, you know. With Punk gone, I don't know, interest is kind of waning for me. I know that everybody's pumped up about this weekend, or last weekend, I should say. You know, Brock destroyed Cena, so I guess we'll see. But Del Rio's gone, and I guess call me when Ziggler's the champ, and then maybe I'll be ready to plug back in again.
All right, well, there's your 30-second wrestling report. Very nice. Hey, John, I know that you've been on the move as well in the off-season, but one thing that's always fun to see, especially on Twitter and Facebook, is when we see all these, you know, championship cup celebration pictures from hometowns and all these kind of fun, goofy activities involving drinking from the cup and all of that. And the Kings now have fortunately been able to do it for a couple of years in the last few goes arounds. And so the question is, what are some of the fun ones this year? And has there been any sort of one-upmanship from a couple of years ago?
No, I'm not sure if there's been kind of, you know, a what-upmanship, but certainly it is interesting to see. There a few things that are interesting to me, I would say. Number one, I like to see what these guys that are kind of on the fringe, and I don't mean that in terms of their talent, but just guys that maybe didn't get into the games a lot, guys that didn't necessarily play even in the finals, like Jeff Schultz. He gets the Stanley Cup. What's he going to do with the Cup, you know? And then you certainly see some of the younger players, and what are they going to do with the Cup? And then also you have guys like Glenn Murray, Rob Blake, Alan McCulley, guys that are, you know, scouts or involved in executive positions, guys that weren't players, but they're involved and they have an opportunity to have a day with the Cup. So what do they do with it? And those are some of the names that have had it recently after the Cup has returned to North America. It spent some time over in Europe. Always interested to see the pictures when Andrej Kopitar has the Stanley Cup over there in Slovenia. Just a beautiful country. And they're on the lake and the mountains and Kopi Wood, as they call it over there. So there were some cool pictures coming back from Andrej Kopitar, and Marian Gaborik had it. Have to wonder what else he did when the cameras weren't rolling. He seems like a guy who certainly likes to live life in the fast lane. And then it made its way through the greater Toronto area there, you know, London, Ontario. Doughty had the Cup, Dwight King, Jordan Nolan, some of those guys, Jake Muzzin, or King actually was more in Western Canada. And then the Cups, that's where it's been recently, is over in Western Canada. And today we started to see some pictures from Martin Jones, back to what I mentioned a moment ago, a guy who didn't really play in the finals but was part of the team. And Martin Jones had his day with the Cup today.
How does it work for guys that leave the organization in the offseason, but, you know, were a part of that Cup win, both back in 2012 and then this offseason? Any examples of guys that have moved on but...
Yeah, we're seeing that actually today, or this week, I should say, because Willie Mitchell, who, of course, was part of both Cup runs, but recently signed with the Florida Panthers, Mitchell had his day with the Cup, and then also Colin Fraser, who was part of both Cup runs there with the LA Kings. Kind of cool deal with Colin Fraser. The only thing he wanted to do with the Cup when he had it after winning with LA in 2012 was take this, what I think has become kind of a really iconic picture of him standing on the dock near some water, and he's holding the Stanley Cup with his jersey on. He's holding it over his head, and you can see from behind. And one of his young kids, his young son, is standing there next to him holding up a mini replica of the Cup. Well, this time around, they recreated that same photo, but with another one of his kids. So there's three Frasers, you know, all of different sizes and proportions, holding up Stanley Cups. So that's kind of a cool picture that happened recently in Western Canada. But man, Willie Mitchell, if there's one guy, if you just kind of looked up and down the roster and said, if I only can see pictures or video from one guy with the Stanley Cup, who is it going to be on this LA Kings roster? And it really was Willie Mitchell, because he was the one who took it up in a helicopter to the top of this snowy mountain last time.
Oh, that's right.
And had the really cool video that they did with the Metallica soundtrack and stuff that they shot in, I don't know if you ever saw it. It's on Mayor's Manor, though. They shot it in full 360 degrees. So and it's like an interactive video. So when you're watching it, you control the camera angle that you're looking at. It's this wild, crazy thing. So I was interested to see what he did. And this time around, of course, being the big fisherman that he is, he took it fishing. And so you see him in those waders or whatever they call, those rubber slickers. That come all the way,
so like fly fishing.
Fly fishing, yeah. There you go. See, I'm not a fisherman, so I don't know the proper terminology.
Well, you're in California, so
Hey, yeah, we just enjoy the sun. We don't get into the hunting, fishing, Mike Richards stuff.
No, but chatting with John Hoven from mayorsmanor.com, one thing did pique my interest. You mentioned Kopitar and Slovenia. Of course, they had a momentous moment at the Olympics for men's hockey, and then obviously the Kings winning the cup and Kopitar being a part of that as well. I mean, he must just be the most popular guy in that country.
Oh, by far. I mean, you want to know what a big deal it is. Bailey, the LA Kings mascot, which for people on Twitter, they understand how big this guy is and what a character he is. Bailey flew to Slovenia and was part of the big, parade, rally, celebration, whatever you want to call it, over there in Slovenia. That's not exactly a quick flight over there. So it was a really big deal. And obviously, yeah, he's a national superstar over there and one of the most popular athletes over there in that country.
So Rob Blake, I believe, won a cup with the Avalanche, did he not?
He did. Absolutely did, yep. He took the C off of his jersey in Los Angeles, forced the trade, went over to the Colorado Avalanche for Adam Deadmarsh and Aaron Miller and a package of players, 5-for-1 if I remember correctly, earned Dave Taylor the GM of the year, and at the same time, he ended up winning the Stanley Cup there in Colorado.
So, as a coach, though, I'm sure the coaches are a little more reserved and less ambitious when they have the cup to parade around.
Well, let's say, those former hockey players, they still have that player mentality in their blood, and they certainly play for the cup, and they want to win that cup. So I would say no. I mean, we've seen some good pictures, and there was some ice dumped on Daryl Sutter's head, and of course there's some great video online. If you go to mayorsmanor.com and search Sutter video, you'll find some video the last time he had the cup up there in Viking at the farm. And this time around, we haven't posted any new video yet, but of course he had the big party with the whole family there, and there are some pictures with him and all of his brothers and everything. It's just crazy when you think about the number of Sutters on the Stanley Cup.
Six brothers playing in the NHL.
It's crazy.
I can't even wrap my head around 6 brothers. I mean, you think about the Stalls, and that's a big deal, 3 guys in the NHL. What happened to that 4th one, though? There was another one, wasn't there?
I can't even imagine having 6 brothers, let alone 6 of them playing in the National Hockey League.
Chatting with John Hoven of mayorsmanor.com. Now, you joked with me about mentioning the Sharks on air, but it is a story. Thornton being stripped, of course, of the captaincy, something I think the Sharks had to do. They got to do something fresh, and it's being reported that there won't be any captain this year.
Yeah, one more quick thing on the Cup, though, also, if you want to look forward. Bill Ranford, another former player.
Yep.
He's, of course, the Kings goaltending assistant, or goaltending coach. He's going to have the Stanley Cup tomorrow, so we'll have to see what Ranford's up to. And also,
back when Ranford, he was the Conn Smythe winner in 90, I don't think they were doing those celebrations back then.
Well, I think what they did is they just did one of those 3-day bender celebrations together as a team, right? That's what they did back then. But, yeah, his kid also is a hockey player, so you have to wonder about, is he going to partake in the celebrations? And if he does, is he going to lift the cup even touch it because you're not supposed to do that if you haven't won the cup. But, yeah, up to the San Jose thing, absolutely, it is the story of the day, and it's pure comedy for me. I think you go back to 2 weeks after they were eliminated by the Kings in the playoffs, their GM, Doug Wilson, who in my opinion should have been the guy that was fired and gone. It was time to rebuild. We've seen what he can do, and they just haven't been able to build a winning team. And to me, that starts with the GM. He's been there long enough to do it. And that didn't happen, and he said there were going to be wholesale changes, a rebuild, those sorts of buzzwords. None of that really happened. The best guy in the room, the guy that really was the number one guy in that locker room from a character standpoint, from a leadership standpoint. Dan Boyle ends up leaving, going to the Rangers. They've made some small tweaks with the roster, but nothing major. And then word comes out today that they're going to take the C off of Joe Thornton. They're really trying to make it uncomfortable for him. They were interested in moving him, and apparently he didn't want to be traded. He has that control based off those new deals that he and Marleau signed back in January. Again, questionable moves by the general manager at that point in time, giving them 3-year deals and allowing them to control their tradability, if you will. So they're just trying to make it uncomfortable for him. Fine, Joe, you don't want to be traded, you want to stay? Well, we're going to take the C off of you. But the best part of the story to me is the way that they served it up, which is that He hasn't really been stripped of the captaincy. He hasn't really lost the C. He can regain it. He can win it back in a training camp battle, which to me, this is just, crazy. No,
Odd.
The guy cannot win the C back in training camp.
That is funny. Mo.
Just to further elaborate on the Sharks here, how much time do you think ownership will give Wilson and the entire staff if they get off to an awful start, like come out of the gates with 4 wins in the first 10, 15 games?
I would be shocked, actually, if they made a move to get rid of them, because they had the perfect opportunity. Doing it 4 games in or whatever, that is, it's worked out, right? It worked for the Kings when they fired their coach. It's worked for a few other teams, but it's a real difficult thing to do at the beginning of the season or in the middle of the season. You want to do that. You want to strike while the iron's hot. You want to do that at the end of the season where you have a whole summer to put your systems in place, get everybody on the same page. It's hard to do it on the fly. In a regular, in the regular season with the 82 games and the travel that's involved, you never catch up. You won't get in any sort of a good rhythm because you will not have had time to have your practices, put your people in place, assess your roster, all that sort of good stuff. So I just think that ownership is content. They buy into whatever they're selling. They believe that this team is going to has the talent. It's the same roster. They have the talent to come back and compete to make a playoff. To qualify for the playoffs, and as we've seen over the last couple of years, if you're in, that's good enough, and anybody has a chance to win. I don't like that from a San Jose perspective because there is something wrong in that locker room. It doesn't work. They don't have the right mix of players, and they will qualify for the playoffs with this roster without making any changes. I think you'll see 5 teams from the Central, 3 teams from the Pacific, and those 3 teams being LA, Anaheim, and San Jose. But what good is that if they make the playoffs and then they only go another round or 2? They're not a Stanley Cup contending team as that roster is built right now. What's the point of keeping them together? I really don't understand it.
He is John Hoven. MayorsManor.com is the website. Mayor NHL on Twitter. Thanks a lot, John.
All right, boys. Have a good night. We'll talk soon.